channel. Go. And will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel at a later date. But this is a great opportunity to have a live presentation. And if anybody is on, can just mute themselves. If you're not already, we'd ask you to please mute yourself. Or if they're not, then we'll ask Ted if he could just mute you, please. The Sault Climate Hub, just like a little bit for anybody who's new or anybody who doesn't know about the Sault Climate Hub, we are a volunteer organization, a volunteer group of concerned citizens advancing climate change mitigation and adaptation to align Sault Ste. Marie with scientific, aspirational, and global targets for greenhouse gas emission reductions through action, education, engagement, and other activities. We meet approximately once per month, and during the pandemic, our activities are have mostly been on online events because of the pandemic, with events and webinars, and we partner with the community and organizations and individuals. And before we begin, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in the Robinson Huron Treaty Territory, and that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, specifically the Garden River and Batchewana First Nations, as well as Métis people. All right, is everyone muted? Okay, so we welcome tonight Emily Cormier. She is the Sustainability Coordinator with the City of Sault Ste. Marie, and she has graciously accepted our invitation to talk about the green initiatives the city has taken and will be taken. This is the second time that Emily has been able to speak with our group. She did initially about a year ago, and we're happy to have her back. We're happy to have her back, and we'll ask for her to start. Just before we start, just a little bit of housekeeping. In the chat box, if you could just write your questions or raise your hand. After Emily's presentation, she will be happy to answer any questions you have. So again, write your question or think about your questions and write them in the chat box, or raise your hand and you can speak verbally later after the presentation is done. And so Emily, over to you.
Thanks, Sandra. It's a real pleasure to be here again. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so Sandra, give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Excellent. Okay, we are good to go. So yes, again, my name is Emily Cormier. I am the Sustainability Coordinator at the City of Sault Ste. Marie. I'm a project manager by trade, and I have a background in natural resources as well as energy planning. The majority of my career has been across Northern Ontario, and I've worked all the way up in Sioux Lookout to back here in Sault Ste. Marie. So I'm pleased to be here today. And I have to say that I'm really thrilled to be here with the Sault Climate Hub. I've had the pleasure of watching many of your webinars over the past few months, and I must applaud you and all of your volunteers for the amazing speakers that you've had. It's been truly, illuminating to learn about the great initiatives that are taking place in our community, and education is such a big part of the need to fight against climate change. So I applaud you, and I'm thrilled to be here again with you this evening. So as Sandra said in her introduction, I'm going to be speaking to you about what's been going on at the City of Sault Ste. Marie with regards to green initiatives. But before I begin, and I know most of you who are in attendance tonight probably know most of this, but just to help lay some of the foundation. Climate change is really the most pressing issue of our time, and we have just under 8 years to really take some serious action, steps, and changes. or face very severe economic, environmental, and social impacts. Now, as scary as that is, there's also a very strong opportunity here. For every dollar that we spend on greenhouse gas mitigation, so that's the reduction of emissions, we can save $3 to $5 in recovery costs. The clean innovation industry is valued at least $2.5 trillion. So there's actually money to be made within this market. And for a municipality, having a green brand is very valuable. Case in point with Vancouver, their brand is valued at $31 billion, and it outperforms the likes of cities such as San Francisco, Singapore, Sydney, Shanghai, and Hong Kong, based on their perceptions of sustainability. Cities also have an opportunity to provide great leadership action for climate action in the fields of green buildings, reliable supplies of clean water and energy, sustainable transport, and all of this can lead to not only a healthier environment, but a more inclusive and fairer society. So this evening, I'm going to walk you through the Sault Ste. Marie Greenhouse Gas Reduction Plan. That might be a smidge repetitive for some folks who've seen it before, but I know that the hub has grown, so I wanted to give a bit of context. Walk you through some of the highlights of things that we did back in 2021, our very first year of implementation of this plan, and talk about what we've been working on in the past 4 months in 2022. I can't believe it's almost the end of April. I'm sure many of you feel the same way. I certainly wish it would warm up though, that's for darn sure. I also want to talk to you a little bit about some keystone pillar things that have taken place at the city, specifically the Environmental Sustainability Committee, the city's Green Initiatives Fund, and talk to you about a really great initiative that has recently expanded to Sault Ste. Marie called the Green Economy North program. And then we'll wrap it up for some questions. So just to give you a bit of context on how this whole journey really started for the city of Sault Ste. Marie, there's a variety of different programs and methodologies that municipalities across Canada can take advantage of to help them in their climate action journey. And this journey really began for the city back in 2019, where they joined the Partners for Climate Protection, which is one such methodology. And this program has over 500 municipalities who are a part of it across Canada. And it walks them through a 5-milestone framework to help them with the goal of implementing their climate action plan. This starts off with the creation of an emissions inventory, helps them set targets, develops an action plan, and assists them and supports them in implementing and monitoring the results. So as I said, our journey for this started in 2019. In 2020, council unanimously approved the plan. In 2021, we started with the implementation, and we move forward with that implementation today. The plan project was a 3-tiered project. It started with the creation of an emissions inventory, which wrapped up in early 2020, followed by robust stakeholder engagement that wrapped up in May of that year. And the plan, as I said, was approved by council in December of 2020. The plan is very robust. It has 60 actions with objectives, responsibilities, timelines, and key performance indicators so that we can measure our progress and track results. The plan also includes a series of resources, including supporting programs, policies, legislation, and funding to tie actions that were identified into provincial and federal programs and funding, et cetera. The plan prioritizes energy efficiency, which was actually a key recommendation in reducing city costs in the third-party service review of the city completed in 2019, which estimated that the city could save about $100,000 a year by focusing on energy efficiency. And this was pretty much bang on based on the retrofit incentives, annual energy savings, and some utility sponsorship that the city received in 2020, which just slightly exceeded that amount by around $106,000. So the plan itself, as I said, was unanimously approved by City Council on December 14th, 2020. Actions are based on a variety of emission sources, as well as action and reduction opportunities. It looks at buildings and energy across the community and on a corporate level, transportation and waste, green space, economic development, and municipal leadership opportunities. The city's goal for GHG reduction is net zero by 2050, and they're taking a staged approach to focus on a reduction target of 10% corporate and 5% community between now and 2020, with an increasing scale of reduction. In addition to those 7 sectors, the plan has a series of guiding principles that were established to further connect it to other initiatives within the community. So these include affordability. So by reducing your energy costs, you create more economical housing. Accountability, by ensuring a sustainable future for the future generations. Education and awareness, by continuing to promote and understand about climate change. Again, hats off to you, Soo Climate Hub, for doing a great job on this as well. Climate change action is not a one-person band effort. It is an all hands on deck effort. So again, I applaud you for your efforts in this very important principle that's outlined in the plan. It also contributes to community pride. So by diversifying our sustainability options, we improve community well-being, economic and development through clean tech and ecotourism, environmental habitat protection by protecting species at risk and forests from climate impacts, as well as health. So reducing the health risks associated with climate change like asthma and Lyme disease. And last but not least, food security by looking at growing opportunities for food production to reduce emissions from the importing of food to our community. So 60 actions, that's a lot of stuff. In order to maintain momentum in the first year, the plan highlighted a series of the top 10 priorities to really focus on to maintain that momentum and get the ball rolling for more intense projects down the road. So there were 10 actions, 5 of those were fully completed in the first year. They included the creation of the city's Environmental Sustainability Committee, which I'm going to talk to in a little bit more detail later on. It also resulted in the appointment of a full-time staff resource, yours truly. And the city also created a web page to act as a one-stop shop for community climate change information, funding, and projects. We also prioritized energy efficiency retrofits to be completed that year and created a supplemental climate action summary for each city department. There were another series of 5 tasks that started and are underway today. These include continuing to ensure that city policies and programs align with supporting the GHG Reduction Plan and targets, undertaking a youth environmental stewardship activity, developing a community retrofit program, which I'll speak to about some funding we applied to in more detail later on, as well as increasing uptake of Eco Schools Canada registration here in Sault Ste. Marie. We also recently completed the streamlining of our regulatory energy and emissions reporting to the province. So that one was checked off the list as well. So I'm going to highlight now some of the key initiatives that took place in 2021. One of the initiatives was staff prepared a report regarding the costs of battery electric vehicles. And this resulted in a resolution to acquire these for light class vehicles on a go-forward basis. As well, the Environmental Sustainability Committee recommended 3 projects to the Green Initiatives stream to council. These included a project for a heat recovery initiative at the John Roads, a summer student green week at the city, as well as an infrared imaging borrowing program at the library. The remaining funds, as per a resolution, go towards the planting of trees in the following year. And this year, we will be planting about 100 trees with those remaining funds on city property. In addition to this, 3 high-level energy audits took place at city facilities, including the Old Stone House, the landfill, and the GFL. The city also partnered with Garden River First Nation to deliver a 4-part energy literacy webinar series from September to November in 2021. Garden River First Nation, like the city of Sault Ste. Marie, is in the midst of implementing their Indigenous Community Energy Plan that also has a heavy focus on energy efficiency. So we decided to team up and share resources and offered a great energy literacy series. We had 4 webinars, and they covered topics, everything from understanding Ontario's energy system to understanding your home energy system, as well as the different incentive programs that are out there for both residents and commercial businesses to support energy efficiency projects. All of these webinars were recorded and are available on the city's website. If anyone would like to check them out at their leisure, lots of great information in there. The city also joined the United Nations Cities Race to Zero campaign, and this is an initiative for cities to help them with their commitments to climate action. It resulted in the city publicly acknowledging the global climate emergency and directed staff to report on steps that have been taken and report emissions under the PCP program on an annual basis. Staff also brought forward information about electric ice resurfacers, or Zambonis, and we'll be purchasing our very first electric Zamboni this year at the Twin Pad Arena. A project that I'm very excited about and hopeful, we still don't know about it, but we did submit some funding to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Green Municipal Fund to get funding for the development of a feasibility study to look at opportunities for developing our very own Sault Ste. Marie retrofit program. So we'll see what pans out on that front. So that's kind of the wrap up on some of the things that we did in 2021. Now moving into what we've had cooking in the past 4 months. So on the transportation side of things, the City of Sault Ste. Marie, along with 12 other municipalities in Ontario, is participating in a study that will develop information, resources, and implement a roadmap for our transition to electric buses. So this is very exciting. There's a lot of planning and infrastructure changes that are required when you're moving away from, not just a car, but large buses from internal combustion to electric. You have to look at infrastructure upgrades, ensuring adequate power supply. So it's really great that this baseline work is getting started. This study was coordinated by the Metrolinx Transit Procurement Initiative, and it's really great to see that the city is part of 12 other communities that are doing this. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be purchasing our first electric Zamboni at the Twin Pad Arena, and we have developed a plan to replace all 5 city Zambonis to go electric in the future. On the central administration side, we have over 29 energy efficiency retrofits underway for 2022. And I will not bore you with all of the details about that, but if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to speak to it. Again, this is a very big pillar of the greenhouse gas reduction plan. On the planning side of things, the planning department is working on developing an active transportation master plan, and the city's draft official plan was recently sent to the Climate Risk Institute, a nonprofit that focuses on climate adaptation and risk assessment. And they'll be looking at that through a climate lens, which is really exciting as well during the feedback period. On the waste side of things, over the years, the city has made some changes to purchasing packages to reduce single-use packaging material. As well, the city's new biosolids management facility will accept municipal source separated organics per the Ontario Food and Organic Waste Policy. So that's a project that's being worked on right now. In 2021, the city partnered with Clean North and developed their plastic-free pledge, which encourages residents and businesses to reduce their consumption of single-use plastics. So that is continuing to be promoted to encourage local participation. And most recently, the city has started a consultation process pertaining to a single-use plastic ban. This started at the end of March and wrapped up recently, last week, I believe. We've had a very large number of responses to this, which is really great to see. 707 responses to the community survey, 89 responses from businesses. We had 39 people attend a virtual open house earlier this month, and results are currently being analyzed, and insights will help shape the bylaw, which has an estimated timeline of July 1st. I've only started doing the analysis now, so I can't really go into huge detail because I haven't crunched all the numbers yet. So please keep your eyes open for that. But that's another initiative underway. And the city's economic development team is continuing to work on attracting renewable energy companies to Sault Ste. Marie. And another great initiative that they've been working on is the creation of the Canada Water Agency Task Force. The city's economic development team has been leading efforts to work on a proposal to attract the Canada Water Agency to Sault Ste. Marie. So this has highlighted a lot of the research and scientific efforts that are being done in our area regarding fresh water. And it's a wonderful initiative to see their efforts on that. Funding applications are part of daily life at the city. So many have been submitted. A couple I wanted to highlight. One was submitted in support of the city to the Conservation Authority to Intact Insurance regarding a hydrology and flood inundation study. We're still waiting to hear back on the funding for that one, as well as an application was submitted to NRCan's 2 Billion Trees program. We're hoping to hear back from that one as well. Another initiative that perhaps some people may or may not be aware of is the City Studio partnership. I'll just pause for a second to explain to those who maybe don't know what that is. The city in 2021 partnered with Algoma University in an initiative called City Studio, where students team up with city staff to work on projects where they gain real experience, and the city helps the city with capacity on moving forward on some great projects. So there were 2 sustainability projects that started this year. One of them that were being worked on by students at Algoma University. One of them was a voluntary local review of the city's official plan backgrounder through the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So for those who don't know what the Sustainable Development Goals are, these are 17 global goals that were identified by the United Nations that cover a variety of topics from food security to climate action, poverty, equality. And a voluntary local review is an initiative that has been undertaken by many communities. It's starting to take more traction here in Canada. The City of Thunder Bay recently wrapped this up on their end. So we're looking at this as like a mini voluntary review to help us track our progress on community development. So we're hoping to see the results for that in the summer. As well, students are working on developing a sustainability guidebook, which will contain information regarding green transportation, green buildings, as well as food security. So we think this will be a really great resource, information sharing, and we're hoping to see that be wrapped up in the summer of 2022 as well. This year, there's been a lot of outreach and partnership opportunities. So far, we've done about 10 or more, I think. So lots of presentations, information sharing. One that I wanted to highlight that wrapped up recently was the Earth Day BioBlitz, where the city partnered with the Sault Ste. Marie Conservation Authority and the Kensington Conservancy. Now, for those who don't know what a BioBlitz is, essentially it's an opportunity to identify a variety of different species, be it flora or fauna within a geographic area, and it helps with identifying species at risk, invasive species, and it contributes to an inventory of what types of animals and plants are living in your area, and builds better awareness about biodiversity and conservation. We leveraged an app called iNaturalist, and if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share the link. Over 1,000 species were identified over the weekend. I think it was a 3-day period that we had the project open for, and over 300 species were identified. So this was a really great initiative that contributed to understanding about biodiversity in our area. Another project that we are working on looking into is the possibility of a climate lens. So creating a climate lens to be applied to city council projects, city projects, so that there's more of a holistic understanding regarding climate action across all departments. So we're still working on some research for that right now. And I wanted to highlight a couple of upcoming projects and initiatives that might be of interest to folks. Specifically next month, the city has happily partnered again with Garden River First Nation. We'll be delivering a webinar, an energy literacy webinar, this time regarding solar energy. I'm happy to share the link with anyone if they're interested, or maybe I can pass it along to Sandra and she can share it with the greater Hub community. We've got 66 registrants so far, which is pretty darn impressive considering people are very zoomed out in this new world that we live in. Speakers include Helene, local solar panel manufacturer, the PUC, Algoma Energy Solutions, and an energy auditor. So if anyone has any burning questions regarding, how do you start, how does solar energy work, I encourage you to register for that. And we will be also completing a review of our corporate emissions as required by our city's Race to Zero pledge, and we'll have that hopefully wrapped up by the end of Q3, so September. So that was a lot of information. I know I've been doing a lot of talking, but I'm going to shift focus now to some more, some different areas of focus that I wanted to bring some attention to. So again, I've given you an overview on some of the things that the city has cooking as it pertains to the greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan, as well as other sustainability initiatives. But I wanted to take a moment to talk about 3 different areas. And the first one is the Environmental Sustainability Committee. So the city had a green committee that was established, I believe, back in 2007, and it was comprised predominantly of city staff. And this was a committee of council. And in 2021, this pivoted and became the Environmental Sustainability Committee. It's substantially smaller, but it's comprised predominantly of external community stakeholders. And they support projects that relate to environmental sustainability in Sault Ste. Marie. They're also acting as the overseeing body regarding the review and implementation of the GHG Reduction Plan. I wanted to highlight a couple of the initiatives that they're working on this year. One of them is a member spotlight series. This committee is comprised of several actors within the community who are all working on either environmental sustainability or are very passionate about it. So we're leveraging the committee as an opportunity for them to showcase what it is that they're working on. And I have to say, so far, it's been very enlightening and a reminder that there's so much research and great work being done in and around our community. The committee has also created a working group that is really focusing on moving forward 3 key priority projects that they've identified, including one as it relates to active transportation, stormwater management, as well as an expansion of the city's green fund to include regreening projects. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail shortly. The committee also oversees grant applications to the city's Green Initiatives Fund, and they continue to support and champion sustainability initiatives for the city as well as the community. The second initiative that I wanted to talk about is the city's Green Initiatives Fund. This is part of the Community Development Fund and was only launched last year. There's $50,000 available, and local nonprofits and city departments are eligible to apply for projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve water quality and rehabilitation, as well as increase energy efficiency. Applications are accepted on a rolling basis, and any remaining funds, as I said earlier, will be used towards tree planting on city land in the following year. So if anyone listening knows of a nonprofit locally that might be interested or have a project like this in the hopper, I encourage you to reach out. Always happy to work with people on a one-on-one basis to help them with their projects to bring them towards the fund for review. And the last item that I wanted to talk about is the expansion of a program called Green Economy North to Sault Ste. Marie. So just for a bit of context, there is a nonprofit in Sudbury called Rethink Green, and they provide support for environmental programming for businesses, households, and communities across Northeastern Ontario. The Green Economy North program is a nationwide program, and it started in 2016, and it helps businesses and not-for-profits, as well as broader public sector organizations, reduce their carbon emissions year on year through a membership program. And Rethink Green in Sudbury is one of several Canadian delivery hubs of this program. The program offers affordable and tailored support to members to set up and achieve sustainability targets. Their services include carbon measurement and reporting, energy auditing, and action planning through a 4 milestone framework. So in 2022, they received funding to expand this across Northeastern Ontario, including Sault Ste. Marie, for local organizations to access their services through a cohort model. And starting in the fall of this year, participants in the program will also be eligible for a micro grant to help cover costs linked to the implementation of their greenhouse gas emission reduction projects. I think this is a really great idea because, a plan can only go so far. And at the end of the day, it helps to have some money to make progress on implementation of projects. Rethink Green will actually be here in Sault Ste. Marie in June to inform the community more about the program. They'll have a booth at the Science North Roadshow. So I encourage anyone who might be interested in attending that to please check them out. But the Sault Ste. Marie has actually had their first organization join the program. There was a cohort that launched in February of this year, and the community group was the Sault Ste. Marie YMCA. And this is very exciting. It's nice to see a local business or organization rather take part in this, and hopefully we can see more with this program being expanded for delivery in our community. So if there's anyone listening who would like to learn more, I encourage you to reach out to me. Sandra has my contact information, and I'll also have it at the end of the presentation, and I'll be sure to put it into the chat as well. So that was a lot of information. I know I'm sure your minds might be buzzing, but there was a lot going on in the past couple of years. So, we've worked hard on creating our emissions inventory. We're working on, implementing, and we're hoping that we can move forward with continuing the great work that the city is doing. So with that, I encourage you all, for those who haven't had a chance, to please check out the city's greenhouse gas reduction tab on their website. A lot of this information that I've talked about is there, and you can also reach out to me at any time. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and I will open it up to questions. Oops, pause share, stop share. There we go. I think we're good.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily. That was a really good, informative presentation. I'm really intrigued with a lot of the initiatives that are going on right now. So without further ado, I'm going to start with some questions. Danielle is asking, thanks so much for your talk. Will the electric bus study mean we will have some electric buses in the rotation as sort of a pilot project?
Okay, let me just take a look at it. We will have some electric buses in rotation as sort of a pilot project.
And where?
Okay, so the city is working on the planning for electrification. So yes, I assume we'll eventually get one to start. So I suppose that one would be a pilot, but we have plans to electrify a portion of our bus fleet for starters, and who knows what the remaining fraction will look like. But we're definitely getting the ball rolling to do that. But to do that, as I said in my presentation, we really need to understand, like, our current facility obviously doesn't have the infrastructure yet, the chargers. We also need to understand the energy supply. So this study will really provide us with the tools, the costs, and the understanding on what we need to move forward in that.
That's great. And Daniel's also asking, where can we go to see the member spotlights from the Environmental Sustainability Committee? Are they on the city website also? Sure,
good question. I forgot to mention that. So the city's committees are all being recorded and are uploaded to the city's YouTube channel. So you can check that out there. I can also send Sandra the link for that. It's part of, these presentations are part of the greater agenda of the Environmental Sustainability Committee. So you'll have to probably fast forward a little bit just to get to that section. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. So far, we've had presentations from the PUC, NRCan, as well as one of our committee members who works at Algoma University. So the committee is comprised of 9 people, and all of them will have an opportunity to do their spotlight. And we meet once a month, and there are 9 of us. So stay tuned. And if you have any questions, just reach out anytime.
Good. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, Mark has got his hand up. So Mark, do you want to unmute? There you go.
Hi, Emily, and members. This is my first time attending one of these meetings, so it's fantastic. Thank you for being such a conservationist, Emily. In terms of time, you spoke so fast, we have lots of time for questions. So my question, actually I have a couple. And to the last person who just asked that question, if you look on the city's corporate calendar every month, you'll see that you'll be able to see in real time the committee meetings. They're advertised there. You get their agenda and that sort of thing. So that's also a way to see the videos that happen in real time every month. But my question, Emily, is the environmental, is it called Environmental Sustainability Committee or Environmental Monitoring?
You got her. Yep.
A couple of months back, they had a proposal about a 20km/h sort of speed limit in the downtown. And I recently had the opportunity to speak to the Downtown Association about what's considered to be the worldwide walkability city standard of 30 km/h. And the reason it's the worldwide walkable cities standard is because at 30 km/h, only 5% of the people who get hit by a vehicle end up having a fatal accident, whereas at 50 km/h, 85% of the people who get hit have a fatal accident. So it's a significant difference, but not only are there environmental benefits like reducing the greenhouse gas emissions of the vehicles that are traveling in the area, if you were to apply that to the entirety of downtown, well, all of a sudden, like anything below Queen or Albert Street, let's say, if all those were 30 km/h, then you'd have an active transportation sort of mecca. And you'd get all kinds of bikers and walkers and people who are getting off the cruise ships. And it would become a Petoskey-like environment where, you know, vehicles aren't the main thing. You've got people actively with active transportation hanging out in every nook and cranny of the downtown, which are basically eventually the Downtown Association retailers. And it just creates a more leisurely pace, but it also has health benefits, like people with asthma, as you pointed out. You know, all of a sudden in that area, if they're hanging out in that area, they can, you know, have a place where they can, you know, where the whole city is just slowed right down. And the people who just want to pass through the downtown, well, they can use Albert and Wellington streets to do that. And the retailers don't really care too much about them because they're only passing through. Anyhow, is there any sort of consideration by the Environmental Sustainability Committee to put forward that idea? And I'll tell you where the 30 km/h came from. It came from an organization called 880 Cities. There was a gentleman who came in 2018. His name was Gil Penalosa, and he and his 880 Cities people, they commissioned a report that details the benefits of this. This is fully annotated, you know, scientific studies that support this initiative to create a sort of, you know, walkable cities where you're not, where you have an 8-year-old child who's going to walk, you're not afraid that they're going to get hurt. They can play hockey in the street and have the ability to say car and get out of the way.
Thanks, Mark. Sorry,
we
have lots of questions from other people. So can you just maybe ask one question and then we can move on to the rest of the people that want to ask questions?
Yeah, so is there any sort of urgency to changing that to 30 km/h downtown?
Okay, well, thanks for the insight. Just to provide some context, the Environmental Sustainability Committee were given the opportunity to come up with ideas for project priorities to be considered and championed by the committee. And that was one of several that were submitted to the committee, and they were all discussed. And then there was a prioritization process where 3 projects were selected. Now, those that weren't selected does not mean that they won't be considered, but there's only so much time that the committee has to meet. And that was one of the projects that was proposed, but it didn't make the cut for those top 3 priorities. What is happening right now, as I mentioned in my presentation, is the city is undertaking the development of an active transportation master plan. And many of the insights that you brought forward, not only from the 880 cities, and I'm very familiar with that presentation that took place here, really interesting, great resources from that. I feel like the active transportation master plan consultation process, in addition to what you've already done with the Downtown Association and speaking to this, would be a really great way to bring forward some of these positive insights that you brought forward on walkability, health, as well as even revenue for downtown retailers. So I would encourage, I'd be happy to take your information, honestly, and get the planning department to connect with you to get an update on where that's at, because I assume the active transportation master plan is going to have a consultation process. And I think that would be a bang on place to bring forward those ideas. As I said, it's not being discounted, but like it's there in the hopper, but we're focusing on 3 other projects right now on the Environmental Sustainability Committee level.
Hey.
Okay, then our next question comes from Linda, and she sent it to me privately, so I'm just going to read it out, and then we have another hand up. So we'll do this one first from Linda. Do any of the plans include goal of restoring passenger train service from Sault Ste. Marie to Sudbury and North Bay and north to Hearst? So any of the passenger train, has there been any discussion about the passenger train reintroduction in our area?
Not within the GHG reduction plan. However, as I said earlier, climate action is not just about this plan that the city is working on implementing. For sure, there's opportunities for emissions reduction from, congregated transportation. So if you try to put people to take the bus more as opposed to people using single-use passenger vehicles, of course, there's opportunities for that, but it's not part of the plan. But I'd be happy to speak to this group about it in more detail.
Great. Okay, I'm going to ask a question from Kara, and then we'll go to Mark with this hand up. And Mark will ask you to unmute when you get a minute. From Kara, will the private household reductions such as solar panels be reported separately from the city reductions or are aggregated?
Good question. So they'll be reported separately. So just to provide some context, when the city started this process, we developed an emissions inventory, and we looked at community emissions and corporate emissions. So the community emissions looked at emissions from the use of natural gas, electricity. We had to aggregate and estimate data for propane and fuel oil because that data is not readily available. And that's what created our baseline for community building emissions. So we will be reviewing that as per the GHG reduction plan, which recommends looking at community emissions at least every 5 years. But specifically on a corporate front, we'll be looking at city emissions on an annual basis as per our city's Race to Zero pledge.
Okay, thank you. Mark, if you can there you go. Hi, Mark.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Emily, for a great presentation. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I just a couple questions here. I'm glad that you mentioned that the draft official plan is going under review. Okay. And who is this Climate Risk Institute is reviewing it?
From a climate lens specifically. Yeah.
Right. There's a couple of issues that I don't know if you were familiar, if you've had a chance to read it yourself, but I was kind of taken aback by the fact that that they actually want to make the city bigger under the draft under the draft official plan. There's this idea of making the city bigger, and I just think this is probably one of the least dense cities in Ontario. And the last thing that we needed to do is make the city bigger, which means more infrastructure, which means more carbon load, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted you to personally have a look at that and see what you think. Okay. The other issue I had was something that somebody brought up a while ago, was the parks that we have in our city. And I'm not advocating for removing any parks, but there just seems to be a lot of space in these parks that really don't get used. And we need housing. So at some point in time, I did talk to the planning department about it years ago. And the official plan, the draft official plan, completely ignores that. And I'm wondering why. Okay, so I was wondering if you could have a look at that as well. Okay. And my third peeve as a renovator builder for the past 30 years, I don't think we understand as renovators and builders how much embedded carbon goes into building materials, especially a piece of drywall. If anybody actually saw the processes that are needed to make a piece of drywall, you would never use it unless you absolutely needed it. So it gets down to urban blight removal. I think far too many homes in the city, especially in Center West, being renovated, and even renovated at probably not the best quality. We need to take a look at that. And I think that there should be more emphasis here on urban blight removal, and homes that are past their life cycle. It would probably be better in terms of carbon and in terms of the environment, in terms of a final outcome, to have these homes removed and then probably start new. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that as well. I probably could have about 10 other questions because your presentation was so good, but I'll leave it at there, and with the emphasis that I'm kind of concerned about the draft official plan. I think the way it's done was the same way it was done maybe 30, 40 years ago, that we're not intensifying the city. And the mere fact that we even have the thought that we're going to make this city bigger is probably very wrong. So I just want you to have a look at it yourself personally. Hopefully the people at Climate Risk Institute will let them know that too, but you never know. Anyways, those are my questions, and thank you again for your presentation.
Mark, thank you for your feedback. Specifically with regards to the official plan, I encourage you to reach out to the planning department if you have any specific questions about that. That's their domain specifically. But I did want to talk to you briefly, and maybe we can do this offline, about embodied carbon. So last year, we actually did a presentation at the building permit. I did a presentation at the building permit open house regarding embodied emissions. And there's municipalities across Ontario, as well as, across Canada really, that are starting to look at embodied emissions. Traditionally, we think about emissions, we look at operational emissions, so the consumption of natural gas, but you're absolutely right, Mark. Those life cycle emissions are very important to consider, and there are better ways to build homes, to use materials that are less carbon intensive, as well as homes that run on, but that are more energy efficient. And so you had mentioned that you are a builder, and I would really like to talk to you about this in more detail. So I'll put my email in the chat, and if you could send me an email with your contact information, I'd like to talk to you in more detail. But in the essence of time, I might end it there.
Great. Well, I really appreciate the feedback, and this presentation is great. So thank you very much. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Mark. Send me an email.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. We're going to go on to Aaron's question, and then and Kara has her hand up, so we'll go to Kara next. Aaron is asking, do you foresee any incentives and supports for new home builders, either in the built to structure or native species habitation on family land? Do you want
I'm just going to read that again myself. For supports for new home builders, either in a built structure or maybe on the family land. So incentives and supports. Specifically right now, like I've been trying to increase my understanding about different incentives that might be available for retrofitting homes, but also if there's anything out there when it comes to building new homes. I know that Enbridge specifically, they have a program where they work directly with builders when it comes to solar, actually, but it's more on like a subdivision level. And I'd be happy to speak to that in more detail, maybe offline, just in the essence of time. I'm not exactly sure if I understand the latter part of the question. So if there's a possibility to elaborate on that, that would be great. There's a lot going on in this space right now when it comes to not only retrofitting, but building new homes. Energy is really where a big focus needs to happen on how we use energy, how we create energy, how we build. That's a big focus. So incentive wise, I'm always looking, I'm keeping my eyes open. There's a lot of, opportunities for pilots. But I think I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, Kara, do you have a question that you wanted to speak about?
Oh yeah, Emily, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're at the city again and doing all this work. That's fantastic. I'm so excited. And thank you for keeping their feet to the fire. I just wanted to add clarification for my question earlier about individual households reducing their carbon emissions and stuff like that. And would I see it as appropriate for the city sponsored or promoted energy reductions for greenhouse gases as being part of the solution, but people who have, I would like to see a separation of the people in the community who have gone ahead and done it of their own accord and not being aggregated into the report. Do you understand what I mean about that?
Oh yes, I get it. So you mean like individual houses?
No, not individual houses, but like this program of promoting households to retrofit to decrease their carbon emissions. I think that should be included in a separate category to people who have gone ahead, regardless of what the city has decided to do. I'd like to see that separated out, because that shows outside of the promotion of the program that people are invested in this.
Gotcha. Thanks for the clarification. Good point. I would love to see at some point, an ability to feature and highlight some efforts from leaders on different initiatives within our community. So great idea, Kara. I will continue to mull it over and see if there might be a way to highlight that, in addition to what I've been doing and highlighting what the city's doing. I think that would be a great way to encourage more uptake. So good idea. Thanks for sharing it. Okay,
we're on to Ethan. He's asking if the current sustainability goals are independent of the upcoming election, or that is municipal election, or whether the focus could shift following the elections. I guess that's it could shift anywhere, anyhow.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would work. This plan was endorsed by council, but yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure.
We'll see what happens. Hopefully it doesn't get shifted too much. So the next question, there was a message there from Mark Brown. He's got his contact information.
I've got it. Thanks, Mark.
And there's a question. Can you elaborate briefly on the Canada Water Agency, what that means?
Sure. I can also put a link into the chat if anyone wants to check that one out. So in 2021, the federal government made an announcement that they were going to create a Canada Water Agency somewhere in Canada. And the purpose of this agency would be to continue to promote the values of fresh water and encourage research about the importance of this very important resource that we all so greatly depend on. And so the city's economic development team, who could probably do much better justice to this than me, but I'll do my best, created a task force to create the Canada Water Agency group, a series of community stakeholders who are working together to create buy-in and support for whenever the federal government launches that bid to create a very strong proposal on why Sault Ste. Marie would be a great place to house that agency. So what I'll do is I'll just put in the chat here the website, and there's a report. There was a lot of consultation that took place last year. If you have any more specific questions, I did put my email in the chat earlier. You can email me and I can get you in touch with the city's economic development agents group. And I'm going to put the website in here. There you go. You can check it out. Lots of great resources on there about that.
Great, thanks very much. I don't see any more questions coming up in the chat box, but I have a question. Corporate retrofits. Can you give us just a couple of examples of what the city has done so far in those retrofits?
Yeah. Going up here.
And they're probably on the website, but I didn't look at the website, so.
You know what? They're not actually, because this will be included in that update that I was talking about when we do our corporate emissions inventory. Not only will we look at the emissions, but we'll highlight different initiatives that have been done. So retrofits, specifically energy efficiency retrofits, are projects that are taking place on city buildings that reduce energy consumption. So there's a lot of city facilities, from big ones like the John Roads to small little ones like, James Elliott, the washrooms. So we're working on a variety of LED lighting upgrade projects that reduce the consumption of electricity substantially, but also create very good energy savings. Just to name a couple, there's a big one taking place at the Northern Community Center. That one's wrapping up. There's one taking place at the John Roads. There's the John Roads Heat Recovery Project that will substantially reduce consumption of natural gas. And we're working on 23 small business lighting retrofits. Perhaps people are aware of that program. This is a program offered by the IESO, and small organizations can receive up to $2,000 in free lighting, including labor upgrades to small businesses or small assets. So we're working on upgrading as many of the smaller city buildings as we can under that program. There's an HVAC replacement taking place, and field lighting is also going to be replaced as well. Lots on the go.
Absolutely, that's great. So I don't see any more questions. Does anybody else have any questions in the chat, or do you want to put their hand up? And if not, we will call it an evening. That's great.
There's one. I think Mark has a question.
Sorry, Mark has a question. Sure, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I know you have applied to the FCM for this program for homes to get retrofitted. Let's say they come back and don't provide any funding, or only provide marginal funding. Is there any sort of backup plan?
Yep. There's communities so there's three states. Let me start again. There's three buckets to that funding. One is to create a feasibility study, so to understand the opportunity for that type of a program within the community. The second bucket is for designing the program, and the third is to help implement the program. So we're at the early stages. We've applied for funding for a feasibility study. This is to build off of a program of something called PACE, or local improvement charge financing, where essentially you can fund a retrofit by tying it to the property bill. So this is a type of initiative that's been used by municipalities across Canada and even into the United States. So I'm always talking to other communities, looking for different ideas, as well as, you know, looking into different financing options. I'd love to see something like this, but I'm definitely doing what I can to find alternatives if we get a thumbs down on that.
Great, thanks very much.
All right. So I just put also, if anyone is interested in taking part in the Sioux Climate Hub or would like to volunteer with us, I just put our email address there. And you're welcome to get in touch with us. And I'm going to say that we're at the end of our meeting. So end of the webinar. So Emily, thank you so much. This is so informative and such a big, so much has changed, or so much has been happening since the last time we had you on here. So keep up the great work. Really.
Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to say good night, everyone. And this will be uploaded very shortly on YouTube. And invite all your friends and family to watch. Keep watching. And our
Thanks,
our next presentation will be in May. And I don't remember the name of the speaker, but that will be coming out very shortly.